Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. I'm Kwame Appiah here with my co-host, Scott. And after a plethora of troubleshooting, we are finally getting started. So it's an exciting Monday. We are very honored to have with us a globetrotter, a very, very well-esteemed influencer who has done so much for herself. Thank you for joining us today, Gabby Beckford.
Hi, so happy to be here. Yes, I'm happy to be here literally in New York City where I can say yes and be available to be on this podcast. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I know you were traveling the last time that we talked, going over to your families. And I know throughout our, process of meeting and getting to this point, you moved to New York.
Yeah.
And then you went to your families as well. So how's the last year been? Did you move to New York from your families or somewhere else? What's the journey been?
That's a good question. And it's so funny that you were traveling when we were talking. I was like, no, I wasn't. I was in DC. Because traveling to me means Poland or China. And I'm like, no, that was just the 3-hour train ride. That's like a commute. That's fine. So I think we met in person at a conference here in New York, and I had not moved here yet. You're right. So I moved here in April. And since then, I've been to 4 or 5 more countries. I went to 4 right before we met. And I technically did just come back from a trip to DC with my family. So before I moved here to New York City, I was traveling full time for the 3 years before that. So 2021, 2022, 2023 was completely full-time travel, digital nomad, where's your home base? No, nowhere, in the carry-on, that's it. So this has definitely been a fun transition, but a transition, a slow down period for me.
That's awesome. It's funny. I saw your post, and I think it was your dad with a leaf blower or something.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because we'll dive into all the travel, but you made this comment, and it was I realized that him wanting me to come outside and do yard work was just, he wants to do his normal stuff, but be around people. And this, you called it parallel play.
Yeah.
I was I've been trying to define this my whole life, because I'm I just want to do my thing, but be around other people. We don't all need to go do something crazy, but it's just spending time together, in the presence of other humans. You be on your phone, I'll be doing a puzzle, whatever. It's the old beach house as a kid thing. We're all doing 5 different things, but we're in a common space. I don't know why that one resonated a lot with me.
I'm glad. Yeah, that's so funny. That's definitely my dad. I'd be like, why? I'm reading a book. Why are you forcing me to be in your room? And he's just like, shh. Let it happen. Now I'm picking up on it.
Disturbing the moment. We're having a moment. So all the travel, I had to ask, how did you get started with the travel bug, with the digital nomad lifestyle? Just, it's so interesting. And I think for a lot of us, it just seems like this crazy thing that we could never do or we could never embark on. And I'm like, what gave you the confidence and the inspiration to just go out and get started?
Yeah, I always say the biggest barrier to travel is really exposure. It's you can't imagine yourself doing something until you have a friend that does it, or you see someone does, influencer or a celebrity or whatever. So for me, it was definitely my parents, to bring it back to my dad. He was in the military. My mom was a travel agent growing up. So she just was talking about the world in a way that never made it seem scary or small. She would talk about her study abroad experience in high school to France, which was a semester. Or my dad would talk about being deployed or things like that. And then we traveled with my parents because of their work. So I really think that my parents set me up for success just by my baseline being that travel's not scary. It was never, they don't speak the same language, be careful, or, it's kind of dangerous in that part of the world. I just never had any of that. So when I decided I wanted to start traveling, they gave me, the safety spiel of being a woman or being young or being Black, but it was never don't go. And I think that set me up for a lot of success in risk taking in my life.
I love that. It's super funny because I remember I didn't travel a lot as a kid growing up. We did beach trips and mountain trips, but not anywhere really exotic. And I got sent to China on a business trip. And they're what was China like? Expecting, and I was like, I don't know. It's kind of like Portland with Chinese writing and different people. It's all the same infrastructure. They have roads, they have
walk.
Cars.
There's a mom with a baby there too.
Yeah. And it's not to minimize cultural diversity. And it's yes, the people look different. They speak a different language. But I think the more that I came to experience different places, there's nuance that makes the experience rich. But it's not like you're going, there are genuine places where it's like, this is a very, very different experience.
Yeah.
Like being in like rural India, like it is slightly different, or like, going to certain places. But if you're in Beijing, it's like, it's a lot of the same modern amenities that you're going to have anywhere else. It's just a different cultural, different experience.
Yeah.
So I love that encouragement for folks not to be scared to get out there and like experience the world.
Yeah, I think especially being American, we have a lot of diversity in lifestyle here that I think we assume is normal and take for granted. Like, I know the shock that I would feel going to rural India, I might feel in rural Indiana. Like, it's just really the difference in lifestyle, right? It's not necessarily something that only happens in India, which could be true too. But that's much more rare than it being just something that you have never experienced in your life style before. So yeah, I think I try to encourage people, like, the things that also surprise you, like the infrastructure change, like you said, or walkability. Moving to New York, I'm like, everything's so walkable. It's not necessarily that it only happens in the US. It's just like a different way of life that you have to be open-minded towards.
Yeah, we're all different, but we're all the same.
You know what? And more the same than different. You go over there and you're like, wait, someone's like yelling at you for crossing the road.
Yeah,
And I'm like, this is just like New York. I feel like I'm back home. So more the same.
Yeah, no, that's funny. So, I mean, obviously you have kind of, gone through this process and really, really earned your way towards like becoming a solo traveler and understanding it and then sharing that journey. But as you were growing up, what, like, you always knew you wanted to travel, but maybe you didn't know that was going to be your life, right?
No.
What did you want to be as you were growing up?
That's such a good question. I viscerally remember I grew up in the CSI era, whatever that was on TV. My parents were watching that. So I wanted to be a forensic anthropologist. And then I found out what they did and I was like, oh, ew. What? Ew. I thought you were on TV. I wanted to be an actress. Who knew? But then I wanted to be a doctor. And then when I got into college, I wanted to be an engineer. So that's what I started college as an engineer. And to be honest, that was, to bring it back to my dad again, first generation, it was doctor, lawyer, engineer were like the only ideas I had as like even possibilities. So I chose engineer because of that. And that quickly changed due to exposure once I got into college.
I love that. It's so interesting looking at kind of the background being like in the hardcore data side to going out and experiencing all of life and traveling, creating content. Like one would think that these feel like very disconnected, but I'm curious how like your personality, how do you feel like you blend that like engineering side, but then like the love of life and exploring? A lot of people like they might see someone in like the creative arts or something like being more akin to travel, less like someone who's in data or engineering.
Yeah, I remember, I mean, my dad growing up was always like, be creative, have hobbies, do what you want, but like get a job that pays well so you have a home. So like work was always like a means to live a life. Like they were very separate. And I really didn't get the idea that they could be combined. Like you could love your job until I got exposed to other ideas in college. And so I feel like what has bridged the gap or bridge the bridge between both of those two things for me is that I've always been a manifester. I've always had a vision. I've always loved knowing why things work and how I can like kind of create things out of nothing. And so I loved that as an engineer and I love that as a creator too. Actually, that is the same technically or I don't know, creatively. So yeah, I really feel like I flex that muscle. I flex that muscle every day as an engineer and every day now. And now I just get to have more input in a different part of the funnel. Like when I was a data person, it was like decision making and are we going to create that or not? And now I've just kind of moved down to like, I've had an idea. Now I can bring it to life myself. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the live to work or work to live, kind of the mentalities, it is really interesting having a real realization between both of those things. Now, I will say the downside of the era that we're in society is that most people are constantly, especially when it comes to everyone wanting to somehow be partially a creator.
Yeah.
Or maybe a full-time creator. I will say a lot of people always have their mind on. They're always awake. They're always thinking about like, what's my next piece of content? So I do think that when it comes to being a creator, that is a boundary that we do have to create for ourselves. But overall, the like work to live mentality is always the side that I think that we should all be striving for, right? It's like you get what you need and then you go enjoy your life.
Mhm.
And, some people I think are really great at finding a way to not blur the boundary too much. And that is a structure that I think we should all try to learn. But with that being said, you know, when did you finally get to a place where you were like, you were traveling, you were moving around and you were like, wow, like I could do this for a living?
Okay, so here's what happened. So I was in college. I studied abroad for a year in Dubai on scholarship. And so I was still in college, but I was in a different city like Dubai. And I saw for the first time digital nomads. I saw entrepreneurship in that fashion, like young people owning companies and having multiple home bases. And that like blew my mind. So I came back and went back to my plan, which was to work for a government contractor and work in a basement without my phone for the next 20 years of my life. And I was like, oh my God, wait. Like once I knew there was another option, I was like, oh, I definitely cannot do that. Actually, I'll die. So I went into my engineering job that I had set up after graduation and I worked there for 2 years, all the while growing my platform on the side. And so I was working full time when I quit that job to travel full time. But the timing was not that great. The pandemic hit like a week later, and I ended up not traveling full time after I quit that job until 2021, the next year. So I was like in the trenches working full time, and it was very motivating to be working in a job that it wasn't bad, but it just wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. To your point, Kwame, I was working, I was living to work. I was commuting 3 or 4 hours a day in DMV traffic and working in a government facility. I couldn't have my phone. I couldn't be creative in any way. I was in a building with no windows. Like that's how that was my day-to-day life. And I remember coming out of the office building in time, like right now in December, and it was dark when I went in and dark when I came out. And I literally remember thinking, I am too young to live like this. And that's when I knew I had to like really get serious about going full-time in entrepreneurship and like making my own way.
Have you ever heard of the AT&T Long Lines building in New York?
No. Mm-mm.
So you look it up sometime. It is just a cement
building.
The
jail looking one.
Yeah, it's like it's 33 Thomas Street, but we walked past it when we were back in the city, and it looks exactly everything you're talking about, where it's like a skyscraper with no windows, and it's actually like where all the lines and the switches used to be for the telephone system. But it's like if you imagine just people locked in a cement bunker, I'm like, this gives off like Secret Service, middle of the city, no windows vibes, and that's where I'm imagining you were working.
No, that's exactly what you should imagine. That's not far off, except it was in Nowheresville, Maryland. So it's even worse. I can't even walk to a deli afterwards.
That's funny. Talking of Dubai, it's super interesting, and I imagine you had a similar experience based on you talking about the inception, a lot of your inspiration coming from that time. But like, I remember visiting Dubai. It is so young and like international because there's so many people trying to. They're there as expats. They're working to try and create something. And an interesting part of the whole UAE thing is like you're only allowed to come in and then immediately leave. And so you have to be doing something and trying to create something. And so it's just interesting, like, I felt just like really motivated and inspired because one, the vision of the city, everything they've accomplished in such a short period of time. And then the vibe of just everyone's trying to hustle and create and do something. They've left their homes and they're trying to create some different international business. It's just a really inspirational spot to be around. I don't know if you felt that, but
100%. No, that's exactly what I felt. Now living in New York, I see a lot of crossover in the energies between New York and Dubai, except Dubai's in a like region of the world that I had never been to or imagined. And so when you think about like the tech hubs in the world, China, India, even in Africa, all of them are like their New York is Dubai. So being in Dubai and being like, oh my God, there's just like when I was in Dubai, the weekends were Friday and Saturday and Sunday was Monday. And so just literally shifting my mind on like, what does a work day mean? And what does work-life balance mean? And like, I don't know, like Dubai culture of like taking out someone to a work lunch in Dubai is different from the US. Like it just blew my mind. And I remember just leaving there thinking, what I think is true is not true for everybody. And so what I think I have to do or what I think is possible for me also probably isn't true as true as I think it is. So like, imagine what I just cannot. Like I was thinking, imagine what I can't imagine right now, and that just opened up a world of possibilities. And like, I need to start taking some risk. I need to start Googling stuff. I need to start talking to people. I need to expand my world, because there's things out there that I don't even know I want, but I don't even know how to ask for them. So yeah, that it just inspired me so much. That has to be the word. Like, blew my mind.
Yeah, I think people's surroundings
Yeah.
create significantly more impact on them than most of them know. I'll tell you this:
For sure.
when I came back from my tour in Europe of really trying to play soccer, and got to a point where I just didn't see it as a possibility for my future. I remember I had an opportunity to move to like Center City, DC, to really, really start my career. And I had two options. One of the options was I was going to move in with kind of just like a younger couple, and they were cool, and they were like, hey, we just have a third, room, and like you can move in there. And I really wanted that one because it was a walk from my job. Right. Whereas on the other side, thinking about DC, I would move in with these three younger guys who are all real hustlers, but I would have to drive to work. And so I was like, I was really, really, really praying for the walk to work option. And it's really funny because when I first got the drive to work option, I was so unhappy about it. I was like, dang, I'm going to have to get in my car every morning. I'm going to have to pay for parking. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much in it. But ultimately, when I moved in with those guys, my life changed in such a big way, right? One of the guys was a real estate agent who actually owned the house that we were living in. Another one of them was kind of in private equity. He now lives in New York full time. And another one of them was like head of business development at the time. So these were very, very driven people. And when I got into this place, I was like, wait a second. They're all my age. They know these things. These are the things that they want to do. They're really focused. And I think that was one of the biggest catalysts for what my mind and direction and what I thought my limits and capabilities were, is being surrounded by people who I was just like, oh my goodness, they're really out here doing everything that they want to do.
Yeah.
And they're still great friends till today, but surrounding yourself around the right people who want greater things for themselves, who have not set a limit for themselves of, in terms of upward motion, is a really, really important thing. If I could give anyone advice in life, it's surround yourself around people who inspire you. But with that in mind, as you were coming up in your journey earlier on, did you have a mentor or anybody that you were looking up to, or friends that you were aspiring to, help and get to that part of their journey?
Yeah, I think what is so special about the way I grew up, which could be seen as a pro and con, but because I'm me, I made it a pro, was that I traveled so much. Like, I probably don't have friends to this, like, my longest friendship to this day is probably someone I met in high school or middle school. Like, I don't have childhood friends from 5 years old, right? Like, I was moving too much. But that made me chronically online. And so I have, when I think about like the mentors I had or the people who inspired me or like gave me permission to think differently, it was people online. It was bloggers. It was the OG YouTubers. It was TV shows. I grew up definitely a kid of TV and movies. But definitely I'm the person who you just give me an inch or give me an inspiration and that's all I need. I can take it from there. And so I would say mostly it was online people. My dad definitely was a mentor to me, my mom too. But when I think of mentorship honestly, like my mom, if my mom was here, she would be pushing me out of the way to tell you right now that I have not been the type to I guess seek exact coordinates or like a map of how to do something. You give me the destination and I just like kind of bulldoze my way through, and I'm like, I will figure it out myself. I'll trial and error myself to death. I remember in high school, I was like, my dad was like, what are you going to do about college? Like college debt, college debt statistics. And I was like, oh, okay. And I just applied to 200 scholarships and I just like killed myself doing it because I'm like, I will just brute force it. And then I graduated debt free. So yeah, I think luckily I was kind of born with discipline and I just need a few sparks of inspiration to like get me moving.
That's awesome. I love that kind of finding, it feels like somehow symbolic of you like finding your way through college and scholarships and now kind of exploring. I think one thing that we hit on that I constantly feel is this interesting like product of surroundings, or the way that you are somehow you, but somehow also different, being surrounded by different cultures or different surroundings. Like, Kwame and I have talked about it. I was in Mexico living there, like trying to open a factory for a car manufacturer.
Cool.
And it was really interesting because my personality was totally different because I had to speak Spanish. And rather than being outspoken, the loudest in the room, I was the person intently focused on what everyone was saying and then adding my choice words. And everyone's like, you listen so well. And no one in America would be like,
I haven't
you're
gotten that
so
compliment
quiet.
once. What happened?
Yeah, they were like, but it's funny because just being in that culture, it just shaped a different version of who I am and how I express myself in that culture with that language. And I think it's an interesting way, like we don't have to change as humans, and I'm still going to have my core, but you see a different expression of yourself. You learn to appreciate different things in a different context. And I think one takeaway of that too is I always laugh when like you cross a land border and you're like, this is so arbitrary.
Yeah, it looks the same. You're like,
yeah,
when
we're
was
like,
that?
I'm in Malaysia and now I'm in like whatever. And I'm like, you could have redrawn the line and now none of this stuff, the flags and the tax codes and all of this stuff matters anymore. And so it's really interesting when we get in these really like nationalistic debates. Like when I crossed to Vancouver, BC, I'm like, really? Like, there are cultural differences. They like hockey, but if you extend the border like 100 miles more, Seattle would like hockey a lot more just because so I think there's a lot of interesting things to say, like how much divide have we created for ourselves versus truly exists or needs to exist. And that's not to minimize cultural nuance and appreciate your country and what you're a part of, but I think we create bigger boundaries than are necessary between ourselves.
100%. Yeah, I think I really agree with that, especially in that reinventing yourself, or like the ability to reinvent yourself in different countries, different contexts. I feel like that's one of the things I love most about solo travel, and that's what it taught me the earliest, is that we all have roles kind of that we're built to play when we grow up, or who we're told to play, and like that's all our parents know. So like they kind of, here's your little template. But when you travel, and especially when you travel solo, you really get to, in a very literal, visceral way, which is why it's so impactful, decide that you want to land in this country and be outgoing. You want to talk to every single person. You want to be the person who like stays out all night. And then you can go to the next country and decide that you're quiet and not go out at all. And that you're a foodie. You only go like it. You really, the way that you can't do that at home because of the environment and the people around you. And you're like, oh, it's so hard to, I mean, especially as a creator, you have to know that when you start posting as a creator, your friends are like, who are you trying to be? Ew, like you can't change. This is who you are. Don't try so hard. And by traveling, I showed myself I learned pretty early on that, yeah, it is very much possible to change, and that people kind of have to accept what you give them. So you have a lot more control over your life than you think you do. And yeah, once you kind of own that and you're like, no, I'm in the driver's seat here. It's interesting how quickly other things fall in line when you thought it would be so much harder, or a much longer road. Yeah.
I mean, taking control and taking ownership of everything around you, it's a really, really important, like powerful step. I think, when I was going through my journey of playing soccer, I think I always leaned on other factors a little bit too much. And the most powerful moment for me ever in my soccer career was the very last game that I played as an international soccer player. And it was because the first half of the season in Sweden, I was the top scorer in I think the country at the time, definitely my league. But I was killing it.
I was getting it,
Yeah. And then the second half of the season, unfortunately, the first game that I came back, I injured myself. I didn't injure myself. Somebody injured me. Yeah. And it went downhill from there. And I got into this mentality of I feel like when you start to let certain things affect you, you start blaming the external factors. You're just like, okay, this hurts, or I didn't get enough sleep because of this. Or, there's so many other factors that come into play. And so that second half of the season, I scored 0 goals, right? I was also a little bit under an injury and trying to recover. But I also really, really wanted that really big contract. So I wanted to keep my stats up. But going into the last game of the week or of my season, we were in a relegation battle. We were possibly going to get, in soccer, there's relegation and promotion. So if we lost, we would go down to the league below. So going into that game, I told myself, I control my fate. I'm going to do the absolute best I can. I'm going to win. And that entire, I think, like 2 weeks or so in prep, I only watched Kobe videos.
Oh, right.
Yes. All right. And so Kobe Bryant's really important to me. It's really funny. But I remember going into that game, I got onto the field. I didn't start. I wasn't a starter anymore because obviously my performance didn't warrant it. But going into that game, 20 minutes left. It was like the 68th minute. So about 22 minutes left. I told to get my warm up, and as I was warming up, I was saying Mamba mentality to myself over and over and over. Like, I control my own fate. I'm going to do it. This is all about me. And it's probably one of the most crucial things that's ever happened in my life. I stepped on the field, 69th minute. Before the 70th minute, I had gotten an assist, right? Literally within the first 10, 20 seconds. And then 10 minutes later, I got the ball on our half. I've ran it all the way past the other team and scored. And this was like monumental for this city. It was a small city of it was a town of 1,000 people. The population was 1,000 people. So everyone was at this game. It was probably the biggest, happiest moment of my soccer career, because after that goal went in, everyone's screaming. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm capable.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's a really, really powerful moment when you realize you can seize control of the things around you. And if you think you can do it, you really can do it. So I don't know, powerful moment. Wanted to share that. But
love that.
I think the cool thing about you is once you seized control of these things in your life, you've done some incredible things. You know, you've been in so many incredible publications. What, CNN, Good Morning America, really, really cool opportunities. And you are, we haven't mentioned it yet, but you are 2024 ADColor's Creator of the Year.
Thank you.
Look at that. Look, little hand clap for you. So you are doing so many amazing things, as you've gone through this journey. What's one thing that happened? And in that moment, you were like, wow, I'm good at this. Like, I'm very proud of this moment. And this is like, I'm going to use this as my foundation to keep going.
Yeah, I would say that I've had a few of those key moments, definitely. And I feel like those moments of momentum is what I call them, that when you get that validation or that confirmation from the universe that you're on the right track, and that just sparks the next wave of momentum. And like, that's how you build, everything. Like my whole career is based off those little moments. So I would say the one that comes to mind first is probably, I was still a smaller creator. I think I'd maybe just gone full time. And again, it was the pandemic. So I'm like, am I okay? When I have to call my boss next week and beg for my job back, like, is the paperwork through all the way yet? But in that pivotal moment of like, is my foot still in that doorway or not? I remember getting this DM from one of my followers who reached out and said, Gabby, your content has been impacting me so much. Something told me today to like reach out and DM you and tell you this, but you're the reason I studied abroad. You're the reason that I was able to like win a scholarship to college too, that you gave me permission to try and like try again when I failed. And that led to me studying abroad too and graduating debt-free too, which has now impacted me in my life in a way that I can like retire my parents. And so she said that to me. And I remember being in my mom's house. The pandemic had just begun. And I was like, is this something that's still viable? Does this make sense for me? Is this a sign? Like, is this the universe's sign that I should quit? And in that kind of darker moment, I remember getting that validation from her and just saying, like, people may not reach out to you every single day to say that you're impacting them, but you are impacting them. You may not get signs every single day that you're changing lives, but you are changing lives. And so I really took that moment and wired it into my brain as to say that you don't need validation every step of the way. You just need to know kind of internally that you're on the right track and that you're making an impact, and like the signs will unfold before you, which is why it was so nice, Scott, that we started this off and you're like, yeah, you posted that video. And I'm like, oh, my Thanksgiving video that I just kind of like haphazardly threw up. But that impacted you. And like you took something away from that. And you didn't necessarily DM me to say like, hey, that moment, or comment, or say, or send it to 1,000 people. But it's the things that you don't see that have equal impact on your journey as a creator and as a human. So I just now assume, instead of assuming the negative and saying like, oh, I didn't get 10,000 shares, I guess no one cared. I now assume the positive, that this got to the people it needed to reach, and they're like multiplying this in their own lives. Or like, this is going to come back in a big way soon. And that's just a great example with the ADColor thing, that earlier this year, I'm like, influencer of the year, like. And then I saw the other people I was up against, Giraffe Wallow, one of my favorite creators, and Leah Smart, a great editor at LinkedIn. I was like, baby girl, let us manage our expectations when I found that out. And I ended up winning. And so if I was the first person to tell myself no, I never would have gotten here. So I've now decided to be the last person to tell myself no.
I love that. It's so funny on social. I think about that a lot. And it's interesting to kind of analyze your own behavior as a consumer of social media. Cause like a lot of us are on all the time and we're not like sitting there and pounding like on everything. And it's funny because flipping to, some form of content creation, like when I haven't been super active. We put out the podcast and I'm like, I should go out of my way to comment, to reinforce these people because they're creating great content. And this weird vacuum of feedback can be like debilitating if you're in the wrong headspace. And it's so funny because I was walking through the office and we had a co-op program where we hire folks out of college. And this young woman comes up and she was like, hey, I just want to let you know, I found out about Later by watching your podcast. And I love influencer marketing. I love what Later's doing. And I applied that day. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I came back to her later. I was like, did you ever like or comment any of our videos? She's like, no, I don't do that. And I was like, you literally made a major life decision based on the podcast and you didn't engage. And I was like, okay, this is a sign from the universe that like, don't get too hung up on shares and comments and all this other stuff. Put it out into the world. And like certain people will follow up and engage. But it's like, most of us aren't sitting there liking everything that we actually like. So anyway, it's a good reminder for folks when they're out of there on their creator journey.
1,000%. I actually think of now a quote from my mom who's like, compliments are not for you. If you think of a compliment, like walking down the street and you see someone you like their shoes. Oh, I like their shoes. That's not for you. That's for you to give to them, because you're right. It has to be an active choice to engage or share or like give feedback. And to your point, we're all just kind of like mindlessly scrolling. You're like, right now it's like, oh, I saw a TikTok the other day. I'm like, did you know who said that? Did you see any other content? Did you dig any deeper than like, oh, they gave me an idea and that changed my life? It's like, take a second. So yeah, I 100% believe in that too. And I try to implement that in my day. And that's come back to me actually a lot. Me going out of my way to say, hey, I love your podcast, or hey, I love the work you're doing. Hey, I love the impact you've had on me. People are like, wow, no one ever tells me that. And I'm like, no one ever tells you that. You're huge. So I know if it happens to me, it happens to other creators and people in the public image too.
It's funny too, on like anytime I see small creators that produce great content, because the big guys, they get tons of reinforcement or just natural engagement. It's like, okay, they got 3,000 this week, 5,000 likes this time. But I get a video and it's like 7 likes. I'm like, that person crushed it. I'm like, okay, this person, they're in that stage where they need to get like that extra push to keep going. And so I don't know, like I make a habit of like the smaller the creator, the more like I try to lean and give feedback when I really like something. Cause I think it reinforces the algorithm too. Like, hey, like pay attention, give this person more shot, more eyeballs, and it can help them out. But.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is a really important point for creators, Scott. I think the quality of your content does not have a direct correlation with how many people like it or comment.
And that is really emotional.
Shedding a couple tears here. No, but it's so true, because sometimes I'll see something and I'm like, this should be viral.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure that creator creating it was creating it because they loved it, because they enjoyed it and they thought it was good work and they put it out. And they may not have had any expectations. They may have had expectations, but the small thing that we can do is now aligning back to what Gabby just said is like, compliments aren't for you.
Yeah.
If you can, give it, right? Like give that compliment. It's like sometimes the small bit of validation is really important. Like in that moment where Gabby was about to maybe go backwards in her decision to make a huge life step, one small moment really changed that. So I think the ability for us to help power each other forward, constant and consistent validation is maybe not necessarily, it's not necessary, but I will say it could be that fuel and that vehicle that's driving you forward. And you could almost be on E and someone gives you that little bit and boom, there you go. You got,
Yeah.
13 miles on you now and you can keep
100%.
going forward. So I do really think that that's important. Now, as a creator, you've gone through all these different parts of your journey. You've put them all together. You are moving forward. You are creating, a living, an income, I think when we get to that side of things, in terms of, the money side of things, when did you really start figuring out how to create a profit and a living from all of this?
I remember my first sponsored blog post. I think I was still in college and it was still a hobby. And I remember someone reaching out to me via email and saying, "Hey, these are our packing cubes." I actually remember Pro packing cubes. And they said, "Hey, if we send them to you and you try them out and you like them, can you write a blog post for $50?" And my brain, as an engineering brain, was like, how can I review 1,000 packing cubes? What's 1,000 times 50? Like, I can do that. So immediately I was like, oh, if this one, again, it's like the extrapolation. It's if one person's reaching out to me, I have value. I just need to figure out how to leverage that correctly or market it correctly or scale it correctly. So like once you kind of have that little hint of like, oh, this is monetizable, you can scale it if you're creative enough. And it comes back to that manifestor talk, because I just need the platform. Give me an inch. I will take it a mile myself. So that first blog post was $50. And I remember after that, I started writing articles. So sponsored articles back at the time for like Lonely Planet and Travel and Leisure and things like that. It was like maybe $200 per article. And I'm like, this is before AI. I'm like, I can scale this. I can write 800 words, 1,000 words. And so I was pumping out content. And then from $200 an article, it turned into $500 for an Instagram post. And then from $500 an Instagram post, it was a package of deliverables for $5,000. And now it's scaled up to speaking engagements and things like that. And so I would say to any creator who's listening or any small business owner, it just starts with figuring out your value. And so you'll get that in the feedback in the comments or how people are reaching out to you or like what they're reaching out about. It's figuring out your unique leverage point, your value, and then it's really just scaling that. So slowly.
I love talking about like the progression and the journey of going from the blog posts at, $50 all the way up to the brand deals. Along the way, how did you manage the business side of it coming up from the very early days? And then, now you've created a living from it. You're doing a lot more deals and have a lot more going on. Have you created like support systems? Do you have a team who's managing any of this? I'm curious how you manage that day to day.
Yeah, I have a team for sure. I have a team of like 6 contractors who I work in and out with. And I have an accountant. So I have a CPA I pay monthly for sure. She does I'm a digital nomad too. So I'm like, please, I don't want to get arrested by the IRS. Do whatever you need to do to save me money and my taxes and make sure I'm like up to code. So she does all that. I have multiple VAs. I have a project manager. I have a brand strategist. I've hired PR in the past, things like that. And I think that allows me to work in my zone of genius. And so my zone of genius is obviously the content creation and being public facing and talking. But it's also for me, the emails. Like only I can tell the story, my story the way I want it told. So I like to respond to most of my emails myself. Even though I've had management in the past, I feel like I still leverage myself best. So basically I remember writing out a long list of the things I did every single day or every single week. And it was insane. It was between like a business. If I was like a full scale business, I'd have 8 departments. So I wrote down the different tasks I wrote. And then I said, what do I suck at? Like, what do I avoid, I forget, or I'm just really, really bad at? And then those were the first things I hired out for. So yeah.
I love that, talking about kind of what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like to do, what you don't. It's like this ikigai type concept. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's like what you're good at, what the world needs, what you like to do, and kind of being in that central zone is where you'll be productive for society and happy.
Sustainable, like not burning 100%. Out.
Yeah, I talk about that a lot because there's a lot of things I'm not good at, and that's why we have an amazing team who can do all those other things. And
me too.
I like the zone. I like the zone of genius. I don't know, zone of competency for me, less genius. But, what one logistical question, and I just think about, you've gone to so many countries. I think it was like 47. I don't know what the latest count is, but 52. A lot of solo trips. 52, crazy. So how do you like? Where do you even get like start on the next trip? You're like, I'm going to go to Kenya, China, or Japan, or is it like brand inspired, or you're just like, I want to go here, so I'm going to make it happen and manifest a trip to wherever?
I have the best. This just came in the mail. Okay, so no matter where I am, every year I have this gigantic calendar, like absolutely not human-sized calendar. And I put on that calendar where I have to go because it's a brand partnership or it's a time of year, like Cannes Film Festival happens in June. I have to be in Cannes. So I'll put it on the calendar, and then in between I can... Okay, wait. I have not been to Cannes yet. I'm actually manifesting as we speak. So if you see me in Cannes this year, put a comment on the content like, wait, we did that.
We'll be there, so we'll have to find a time to connect up.
Yeah, like let's call. So yeah, I put it on the calendar, and then I'm able to kind of map out between those trips. Like, is it worth coming back to the US if I'm going to be in China and Japan within the same 2 weeks of each other? Probably not. So then I'll do the in between. So really it starts out high level. Where do I kind of have to be? Where would I like to be? And then where does it make sense for me to be? When I was traveling full time, 2021, this was like the chaos year. I would fly to, I think I flew first to Dubai to go back to Dubai for the first time since I left. From Dubai, I had no plan. I was like, where do I want to go next? And work took me to Mexico. And then work took me to Republic of Georgia. So I was doing like sick, nonsensical flights. And then Republic of Georgia, I had no plans. So I was like, okay, I'll go somewhere close by. I'll go to Germany. And so I've done it every way possible, basically. And all ways are possible and all ways are fun. I think the way to make it sustainable and not burn out from the jet lag or the money and like just pay exorbitant amounts for flights last minute, whatever, is really kind of the tools and tricks I use, like literally the tools, Skyscanner or Google Flights or things like that, or local airlines. And then it's, I am actually an introvert, despite what a lot of people think. They're like, you're so friendly, you're so extroverted. I'm like, yeah, that's just a limited time only. That's a limited offer. And then I need to be alone. That's why I solo travel. So allowing myself to rest and allowing myself to plan out. And if I really am getting burned out, I'll be like, I'm just doing a month here. And I'm just going to do a month in Mexico and relax. And so, yeah, honestly, the flexibility to be able to say that is what makes it sustainable for me to do.
You're like, oh, I won this award. I have to go back to the ceremony. So what a drag.
You know,
I could be on the beach in Mexico.
Had to be in LA. I'm like, I have to stay in downtown LA, guys. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, with all the different avenues that you've now been, working in, like you said, you started off just writing blog posts for a certain amount of money and it evolved from there. What would you say is now your main source of income in terms of all the different funnels that you have? I mean, obviously there's diversity in it, but where would you say you focus most of your energy?
I would say that right now my largest income stream is probably brand partnerships, just by virtue of being an influencer, but I'm actively trying to change that. So where I focus my energy right now is in my own products. I have digital products, ebooks, and things like that. I'm actually launching a site, my own app in January. And that's really to kind of circle back to my own story, it's meant to share scholarships and grants and make travel accessible for AKA me when I was 18 years old. So I'm launching that app. It's a SaaS product in January. So I'm really, I guess, expanding from creator to creatorpreneur and turning those little revenue streams into full-fledged separate businesses.
I love that. It's super cool. I saw a lot of your posts like thematically on like how you can work remote and live here, or how you can, get a scholarship to study abroad here. And I think it's such a cool way to experience, these different kind of international exchange programs, or even, there's like one on a boat. It's like,
Semester at Sea. Yeah, that's such a great example.
Yeah.
It's exposure, right? It's that like you never know what that trip might trigger in someone's brain. So it's getting them. It's like everything we've been talking about today. That's pretty much what Seek PTO is. It's like that one inspiration through travel that can rewire you in a cool way.
Yeah, and I think that time of life is just so you're like queued up to be open-minded and to explore the possibilities of what could and should be. Like I think before that you don't know and you're still trying to figure out like what way is up. And then it's this kind of interesting high school college transition of like explore the world, explore you learn about things that are good, bad, different, and trying to make sense of them. I think it's such a unique and cool time to go out and explore the world and in a very formative way.
Yeah. And I'm like actively trying to grasp every single person in that time period and be like, I was lucky enough that this fell into my lap. I'm trying to push you. Like, this is the time. Go travel. Go take that risk. Go have your brain rewired, because next thing you know, life hits. And then a lot of obligations and a lot of like expectations, whatever. If you don't kind of have that expansion at a certain time, you asked me like when I was younger, what kind of primed me to be open-minded like that? I think it was because I was young. I didn't let those limitations form. And so I'm trying to help people before they have those limitations form.
Yeah, you too could be petting a whale in Mexico.
Please. I'm just saying, know your options.
That video is amazing, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, that was exciting. That happens in February if you want to go see the whales in Mexico.
Well, sweet. Well, Gabby, as we get to a point where we're wrapping up, we have a couple things that we like to touch on, which, by the way, have really, really enjoyed the conversation so far. So thank you for lending us all of this really cool experience throughout your life. But when it comes to the creator side of things, we like to do a this or that. And that this or that really just pertains to what you prefer as a creator. So I'm just going to ask you, it's going to be a lightning round. You give us what the this or the that is and one sentence to sum up why.
Okay.
Cool?
All right, I'll try.
Sweet. So Instagram or TikTok?
Ooh, Instagram, because I feel like the depth of community, I feel like it's quality versus quantity.
Okay, I like that. Short-term or long-term partnership with a brand?
Long-term, easily long-term. I feel like the statistic is that a consumer needs 7 touch points to like be sold on something, even the idea of something. So the longer you let me talk to my audience, the more value the brand gets. It's a win-win.
Oh, I like that a lot. Okay. Well, with that being said, would it be short form or long form for your content?
Oh my God. I have to say short form, even though I want to say long form. Short form, the way my brain is wired, I can just get more ideas out there and see where those lead. Whereas long form, honestly, I'm working on an editing team. If someone has a video editor they want to suggest to me, let me know, because if I have to edit my own long form videos, you'll see them next year.
I like it. A story or a grid post?
Definitely a grid post with the way the algorithm is right now. I used to love stories, but I'll go grid right now.
Okay. And then if you're on your grid, would you want it to be a video or a static post?
I like consuming both, but I'll say a static post. Maybe right now, December, that's my answer. But I like a static post these days. I like a little cozy scroll and read.
So the other question that we ask is if there's one brand that you haven't worked with that's just like tops, it would be, if they approached you, it would be the best brand deal you can imagine. Who would that be?
T-Mobile. Call me, literally. I've had T-Mobile since I was in high school, and I've obviously had it on every single trip, and I love their international plan. I love the pink, the Pax Light pink, and the T-Mobile pink are not far apart. And I always just, love my T-Mobile service. So call me T-Mobile.
Yeah, I've had T-Mobile since 2011.
Right. OGs.
Yes. And the great thing about T-Mobile is I had a plan that was international. So if I went to Europe, I didn't have to change anything. And it, could have been very slow, like 2G-3G.
And actually, so funny. I was just in China and I was on the Great Wall of China and I FaceTimed my dad. And my dad's like, is there Wi-Fi? I'm like, no, I'm on my T-Mobile plan. So
wow.
It really comes in handy. Yeah.
We're going to send that clip to T-Mobile. T-Mobile, we're sending you that one.
Send me back to China. I'll FaceTime anyone you want from the Great Wall of China.
So it's funny, and maybe like to put a bow on, it's funny how, so you posted that. And then the kind of alpine slide. And I think you
Oh,
were in
yeah.
the same spot that I was. So
Oh,
I was in an international master's program, and we had to, for an entire year, take a second language. So I took Japanese every day for a year.
oh,
And then
cool.
the culmination was we went on a 4-week trip to Tokyo, to Korea, Beijing, Shanghai. And I was at that spot in Beijing. And I remember being there with my classmates. And in Portland, you wear like the Blazers jersey, and it's like a where in the world, and you get put up on the. So like me and my classmates were in that spot of Beijing, and I remember how terrible the stairs were. And I'm like, I do not live in New York, and I'm not made for that. But no, I can attest to it. It's like I think the encouragement for younger listeners would be to get out there, explore the world. If you have the opportunity to go study or integrate it into part, it was eye opening for me. It made me appreciate a lot of different culture, learning language, experiencing what the world has to offer, and understanding that difference isn't always bad. And difference, we have a lot more in common than we think. And I think in a time that can be fairly divisive on a whole variety of levels, spending time to advocate for our own interests and the interests of the world is pretty special. And I love that you're giving people inspiration to go out and explore and learn about other people, different cultures, and enjoy life and kind of find their own. So with that, where can people best interact with your content and this new app you got coming?
Yes. So I'm Gabby at PaxLight, but you can find me at PaxLight, PaxSlight on every platform. I actually probably need to like consolidate platforms because I'm really on every platform. And then if you are interested in paid travel opportunities, scholarships, like these programs, it's called Seek PTO, SEEKPTO.com. Yeah.
Well, but it's been amazing catching up with you. We'll be following your adventures, and then hopefully we catch you in France in the summertime next year. But we wish you all the success and love what you stand for and what you're putting out into the world. So thanks for coming on and spending time with us.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much. I love Later. Like if you see my posts on social media, you're seeing them through Later. So shout out to the Later platform.
Oh, thanks. We appreciate
Lovely.
it. That's awesome. I love that.
With that being said, all things were amazing today. Thank you for spending that time with us. We had a great time. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you got a lot out of today because I know I did. With that being said, we will see you all next week. Bye-bye.
See you.